What a brutal road trip for the Atlanta Braves. What do they do now? Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, a production of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, author of the Braves Today newsletter over at bravestoday.com. I want to talk about Ha-Seong Kim a little bit later in the show. We talk about brutal. That's been brutal. And I'm at the point, honestly, where despite the fact he's making $20 million this year, I still feel bad for the guy. And it's rare for me to feel bad for anybody making $20 million, but we'll explain that in a few minutes. Before we do that, though, the Braves just finished their final West Coast road trip of the season. Yay! Great! I hate staying up until 10 o'clock to start a Braves game and not going to bed till 2 o'clock on a workday. But they went 1-5 in that road trip, got shut out twice, and of the 13 total runs they scored on the road trip, 6 of them came in one game. So, in light of that road trip, and in light of just having passed 81 games in the season, which, for those of you who it doesn't immediately click there, 162 game season, the Braves just officially passed the halfway mark over the weekend. So let's talk about the state of the 2026 Atlanta Braves. Because I'm going to push back on some of the most annoying and frustrating voices on social media who are telling you that this team needs to just sell at the deadline and blow it up. Because here's the reality, okay? Here's the reality of the thing. The Atlanta Braves right now are 49-33. So they are 16 games above 500. And a lot of that comes because they were very good in the first 2 months of the season. They got to 40-20. Atlanta's high water mark this year of games over 500, they were 24 games over 500 earlier in this month. No other team in baseball, not the Brewers, not the Dodgers, not the Yankees, not the Rays, no other team in baseball has gotten to that point. And they have, let's not mince words, they have been very bad in the month of June. The Atlanta Braves have been outscored by 21 runs in the month of June. They're 9-13. Their offense this month, just this calendar month, 65 WRC plus. Worst in baseball. Runs scored, 74. Worst in baseball. Home runs, 19. Tied for worst in baseball. They've legitimately been the worst offense in baseball in the month of June. That is a fact. That is not a doom and gloom. That is not pessimism. That is a fact. That is numbers. In March and April, which is just over a month, their WRC plus was 117, which was 4th best in baseball. They led the league in runs scored at 177. They were 3rd in home runs at 43. That is also, they were one of the best offenses in baseball. That is also a fact. In retrospect, was being, depending on how you measure, the best offense in baseball, was that legitimate or was that a hot streak? I think it's fair to argue that this offense, as currently constructed, is not the best offense in baseball. But it's mostly the same players who are now, statistically this month, the worst offense in baseball. Are the Braves legitimately the worst offense in baseball? If you don't think they're the best, or that they're the worst. The truth is somewhere in the middle. And the hard part here, the real struggle on this, is understanding what is that middle point. Just for funsies, let's look at the month of May. If March and April, they were, depending on how you look at it, the best offense in baseball, and if in June they're the worst offense in baseball, what was the month in the middle? Runs, they were 6th with 139. Home runs, they were 3rd with 41. WRC plus, they were 10th at 102. And so, are they a top 10 offense in baseball? Maybe. The problem you have is recency bias. I can't tell you how many people have showed up for the first time all season, really, in the YouTube comments of the postcast, or in my Twitter feed, or on the comments of this show, and have said, the Braves are terrible. We've told you they were terrible. Sell, tear it down, fire AA, fire Walt Weiss. You'd be shocked how many people have been proud of their terrible takes in the last week. The fact remains, the 2026 Atlanta Braves are not the best offense in baseball. They're not the worst offense in baseball. They're somewhere in the middle. And the real question that the front office needs to answer or figure out or decide where they stand. How close are they to the first month's results? And how close are they to this month's results? Because again, you have 3 1-month samples. They were the best offense in baseball in the first month. They were a top 10 offense, even by the least charitable of all of those measures, in the second month. And they were the worst offense in baseball in that third month. I like to say fun fact and then say something that's not a fun fact. It's a verbal crutch that I need to fix. But the fun fact here is that the pitching, unfortunately, mirrors that exact same pattern. In March and April, as measured by ERA, which I am not arguing is perfect, but let's just work with me here on this. As measured by ERA, the Braves were second at 3.12. The Yankees were first at 3.11. So it's not like Atlanta was that far off. Right? Flip around to the month of June. Atlanta's ERA is 10th at 4.09. But I think the folly that you have there is looking at that as all pitchers. If you look at just the rotation, which I would argue is a lot more illuminative as to the quality of the team, in the first month of the season, the Braves fall all the way to third. 2.98 ERA. First month of the season, they had a top 3 rotation by ERA. Move to June. 25th. 5.62. Again, they're not a top 5 rotation in baseball. Top 6 rotation in baseball. They're not a bottom 6 rotation in baseball. The truth is somewhere in the middle. And we've got to figure out what it is. If you were curious, by the way, in the month of May, the middle sample of these three, 3.57 ERA. Atlanta was 9th. They were behind Seattle. They were behind the Dodgers, but they were also behind Arizona and Toronto, and neither one of those teams are there right now either. They were ahead of the Pirates, who have Paul Skeens. They were ahead of Boston, who had Still had Sonny Gray and had Garrett Crochet and had Ranger Suarez and all of these. Those three guys together accounted for more money than Atlanta's entire pitching staff, it felt, not just rotation. And Atlanta was better than all of them. The truth's somewhere in the middle. So as we get into the second half of the season, because the common breaking point in our heads and in conversation is the All-Star break. But from a mathematical point, Sunday's finale was game one of the second half of the season. Let's talk about the three big questions the Braves have to answer in the second half. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, this episode's brought to you by our friends at IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom-infused coffees are the tasty, low-sugar brain and body fuel that you need to win your day. The Ultimate Sampler Pack's a great way to try all of the IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. And all IQ Bar products are clean label certified and entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. With over 20,000 5-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom-infused coffees. And the Ultimate Sampler Pack includes all three. Right now, IQ Bar is offering Braves Today listeners 20% off of all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text MLB to 64,000. That's MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. I'm not in any way sugarcoating that this month for the Braves has been a disaster. Atlanta's lead in the division peaked at 10.5 games on May 22nd. When June started, they were at 9.5 games up on Philly. And right now, you go into Monday's off day being up by 3 games. You've given up 2/3 of that lead in the span of a month. And really, you did it in the span of the last couple weeks. On June 7th, you were up 9.5 games. Since then, the Braves are 4-12, and Philly's not been bad. And then for the Braves, you've got St. Louis and you've got the Mets this week. And so it's a combination of a team that is playing over their heads in the Cardinals and a team that is so bad that they fired their manager. And the Phillies do have some challenges this week. They have the Pirates for 4. And it's the good part of the Pirates, right? They've got to face Bubba Chandler. They've got to face Paul Skeens, which, by the way, that July 1st game, that Wednesday game, Paul Skeens versus Zach Wheeler, appointment viewing. That's going to be a fantastic game. And then after they play the Pirates for 4, they get the Royals. And the Royals have been bad recently. So it's a similar situation to Atlanta. Atlanta has 3 tougher games, and 3 on paper should be easier games. The Phillies have 4 tougher games, and 3 on paper should be easier games. So you can halt the divisional slide right here, right? You might lose some this week. They might also lose some this week. We'll see what happens. And then you both have winnable series over the weekend. But there's really three questions that the Braves need to spend the time between now and the All-Star break answering. And I word it like that. AA was on the broadcast last night. They did one of those interviews they do with him for content for Braves Vision. And what he talked about, and there are so many people who misunderstood this and are mad about this. What he talked about is that the trade market is not going to pick up until after the trade deadline. He's been calling teams. He's been working on trades. And the thing that I'm going to call them AA haters, I hate to give so much attention to negative people who are ostensibly fans of the team, but don't show up or come out of the woodwork until things go bad. But I've heard from a lot of them in the last week. because they've all showed up, come out of the woodwork to talk crap about the team they supposedly root for. Fan is short for fanatic, and these people are fanatical about the Braves in a negative way. But anyway, and he explained that the trade deadline's not going to pick up until after the All-Star break because there are so many teams, especially in the American League, which is awful, that are still within one hot week of a playoff spot. Right now, the final team in the AL wildcard spot is the Seattle Mariners as of this morning. 42-43. They have a losing record, and they are in the playoffs if the season were to end before today's games. And there are 6 other teams less than 5 games out. The Astros have been terrible. They are half a game out. Like, all of these teams have losing run differentials until you get to the Boston Red Sox at +5. And the Boston Red Sox are 4.5 games out. The Orioles are 3 games out. The Twins are 2 games out. The A's are a game and a half out. Even the Angels, who just fired former Braves employee Perry Minasian and their GM over the weekend. I was hoping he'd be there through the trade deadline so Atlanta could go get some reinforcements from them because he makes a lot of deals with the Braves. He used to work for AA. They're 6 games out of the wild card. They are one hot week away from being in the postseason, and they have been dreadful this year. And so AA was very blunt, and when he said that the trade deadline's not going to pick up until after the All-Star break. And folks who don't know ball, who are fans that hate the team, was like, oh, he's not making trades. No, he's telling you there's no trades to be made. There's nobody out there that they can reasonably go acquire right now. This team, as currently constructed, is going to sink or swim with the guys that are currently on the roster for the next 3 weeks. There's like a 2-week window between the All-Star break and the trade deadline. And that is when you could potentially see reinforcements. The most prominent name that's been traded at this point in the season is David Peterson. And when the Mets traded him to the Cubs, he had an ERA of 6.09 and had already produced -1 WAR. Now, in retrospect, was that a little bit of an underperformance of some decent inputs? He had a 385 FIP. But he still had a whip of 1.65. He's not a good pitcher. And that's the most impactful name that's been moved at this point in the season. The team they have is the team. And here are the 3 questions you need to answer between now and after the All-Star break. Question number 1, these are in no specific order. I'm not saying this is the biggest priority. This is the order I wrote them up on the newsletter, okay? The starting rotation. So again, top 3 ERA in March and April, top 10 mark in month 2, one of the worst in June. The issue here, and we all know the issue here, right? The issue here is you lost a bunch of starters in spring training. You lost Spencer Schwellenbach. You lost Herschel Waldrop for loose bodies in their elbows. They had surgery. Joey Wentz tore his ACL. You were already out AJ Smith-Shawver, and then Spencer Strider went down. So you had a whole rotation on the IL, which meant Ronaldo Lopez. It meant Grant Holmes. It meant Martin Perez. It meant promoting J.R. Ritchie, all of these other guys. And the difference in the guys you lost and the guys that you kept, with the exception of Chris Sale, were you had the back end guys, the number 4s and number 5s. You didn't have the frontline guys. And the difference in how they play was evident when you look at what changed from March and April to May to June. Because these back end guys aren't surviving off of whiffs. They're not getting strikeouts. Their whole deal, the whole thing that they're doing is they're getting weak contact. and they're getting ground balls. And that's great. That can work until it doesn't. We've already seen Bryce Elder take a step back. He went from a 197 ERA 6 starts ago to a 401 now. He's allowed 29 runs in 30 innings. And I've got a thing, I got to write it up for the newsletter, pretty much about how his Giants, he's not been as bad as that number sounds. And there are going to be folks who just refuse to read it and are convinced we need to DFA him, and that's not the case. He is what he is. He's a back-end starter who, when he's on, can give you 6 quality innings and a quality start. He put up a 50% quality start rate last year. When he's not on, you get an ERA of almost 9. And Walt Weiss has comments about what Elder has to work on and all of that. Martin Perez is still making that same profile work. Still making that soft contact ground ball profile work. He keeps outperforming his expected ERA, outperforming his FIP. And so far, knock on wood, it's been pretty sustainable. J.R. Ritchie, flip side here, was not able to make that profile work because he was walking too many guys. And so when he had, at a certain point, when there's enough guys on base, it's a lot harder to count on ground balls and weak contact to get out of innings because runs can still score. Wow. Can't talk today. Because runs can still score. And if a ground ball gets through, it goes from now there's a runner on first to 2 runs may have come in. And when he had those walk issues, it meant that he had to try and get strikeouts to get out of the jam. And he didn't have the stuff to do it. That's the difference in Martin Perez and Bryce Elder and J.R. Ritchie. Perez has been able to minimize the contact and has not gotten himself into too many jams where he has to get a strikeout to get out of it. Bryce Elder was able to get those strikeouts earlier in the season. He's not been recently, and Walt Weiss talked about the ball's not coming out the same. Bryce Elder leads baseball in starts at 17. He's had, from a number of times he's been given the ball perspective, he has one of the largest workloads in baseball. So thing number one they have to figure out is the state of the rotation. Herson Waldrop's officially back. He's walking too many batters in both of his rehab starts and what we've seen of him in the majors. He's pretty inefficient and he's walking too many guys. But his swing and miss stuff has been good enough to make that profile work in a very limited sample size. They need to figure out over the next month, what is he? What does he look like? AJ Smith-Shawver has his first official rehab start on Tuesday. He'll be in Augusta starting for the Green Jackets. He is probably not back by the trade deadline. You get 30 days of rehab if you're a pitcher, but guys coming back from elbow surgery from Tommy John can get up to 3 10-day extensions of that. So in the best case scenario, they activate him right before the trade deadline. A month from Tuesday is literally July 28th. The trade deadline is that next Monday, the 3rd. So probably your best case scenario is he's back a week for the trade deadline. Your worst case scenario is he's pushing the end of August and you're hitting the postseason eligibility deadline to get him back, right? But they have a chance to see what he can do. We don't know about Spencer Schwellenbach. We can't count on Schwellenbach. He's further behind. He's in a throwing program. We haven't even heard that he's faced real batters yet or throwing off a mound yet. We can't count on Spencer Strider. And so the question for the Braves is going to be question number 1 here. And again, this is not in priority. This is just in random order here. You need to add to this group at the deadline. Do you look for one impact starter? Do you try to get 2 guys who can be number 3s? Do you get back-end guys? What do you do? And a lot of it's going to depend on what Herson Waldrop looks like in the next month. A lot of it's going to depend on what they think they can get from AJ Smith-Shawver. based on his rehab starts and how he's feeling and how the ball's coming out. Thing number one. Thing number two is the offense. And I've already done the whole spiel on this. It's really, what is the true talent level? And where can you find an upgrade? Anecdotally, offensive upgrades are cheaper at the trade deadline than pitchers, especially starters. And so, where can you find an upgrade? How aggressively do you need to go after an upgrade? And again, we need to be realistic here. Byron Buxton has repeated multiple times this season he is not waiving his no-trade clause. Stop asking for Byron Buxton. If it happens, great. AA's going to keep checking in. He's been checking in on Buxton for a year and a half now. He's going to keep checking in. Just like he checked in on Dubon for a year and a half before he was finally able to get Dubon. You've got to figure out who is a realistic addition. And then how aggressively do you need to outbid everybody else to get that guy? And the good news is you have Mauricio Dubon. And Dubon can play a lot of different places. He's been in the outfield almost full time since May. Ronald's out right now, obviously. He's helping cover outfield. And so you have a little more flexibility as to where that guy is. Where you don't have to find a corner outfielder. It would be nice. I'd love to be able to do that and put Dubon at short. You don't have to, though, because Dubon can cover your outfield just like he can cover your corner outfield, like he can cover center field, or he can cover shortstop, or he can cover wherever you need him to. But you've got to figure out, one, how you feel about this offense. Is it ultimately a top 10 offense? Is it league average? Again, I don't think it's number 1 in baseball. I don't think it's number 30 in baseball. Where's the middle ground here? And then the third question relates to the left side of the infield. Let's get to that next, right here on Braves Today. This is a bit of a spoiler alert, but I just pulled up Braves Today sponsor FanDuel in the MVP odds. And as you'd expect, Shohei Ohtani is number 1, minus 2,500. He's perpetually going to be the number 1 option for National League MVP for as long as he's in the league, right? Believe it or not, neither Austin Riley nor Ha-Seong Kim are on the board. Shocker, I know. Neither one of them are on there. Matt Olson's on the board, plus 8,000. Drake Baldwin's fallen off. He missed a month. Then he's been pretty rough for a couple weeks, although Baldwin's at-bats this weekend looked better. I think he struck out only once in the last maybe 2 games. I'm trying to remember exactly from over the weekend, but he's hitting the ball harder. The strikeouts have cut back. Baldwin looks like he's this close to being back, right? He really struggled coming off of the oblique injury, but looks like he's close to being back. But the left side of the infield is a specific problem. And there's 2 separate problems here. The first one is Ha-Seong Kim. I'm going to be honest. I legitimately feel bad for the guy at this point, okay? He can't find the long-term deal to play shortstop that he wants, reportedly, and I guess they're probably happy that it didn't happen. The A's offered him a 4-year, $48 million deal in the offseason to play second base. And there were some escalators in there, some performance incentives and things like that. It was, Ken Rosenthal reported it as, quote, room to grow, which is typically incentives and escalators. But they offered him a longer-term deal to play second base, and he wanted to be a shortstop. Atlanta gave him 1 year, $20 million to come back. And then he slips and falls on the ice, tears a tendon in his finger, has surgery, comes back in mid-May after a very abbreviated rehab assignment. The Braves have been doing this a lot. Usually has not been working out. And he's been dreadful. 5 for 73. And again, I am not typically the type of person that feels sympathy for millionaires. I definitely don't if you're billionaires. If you're a billionaire. But he's making $20 million this year to be one of the worst offensive players in baseball. And it's so far below his career norms. He's never been an amazing hitter, right? But he's had multiple seasons and stretches where he hit in the 250s. His OPS was in the 7s. He was able to chip in with good defense, with stolen base ability, low strikeouts. He's been a legitimately good player at times in his career. He is tracking towards minor league deal this offseason, which is shockingly bad. Atlanta gave him run last week. He made 4 consecutive starts at shortstop. Didn't do anything with him. He did walk on Sunday. He had 2 walks in that Giants series. He was 0 for 8 with 2 walks and 4 strikeouts. But just nightmare season for Ha-Seong Kim. His last hit was June 3rd. Like, since then, he's 0 for 24. He only has 8 strikeouts in that span, but he's 0 for 24 with 4 walks and 8 strikeouts since that last hit. The Braves have to figure out how much longer they can carry an empty roster spot in Ha-Seong Kim. His defense has stabilized a little bit after being rocky early in the year. And part of me wonders, is it we're going to have to just carry him until Ronald Acuna Jr. is back from the injured list? When you add Ronald back to the outfield mix, is that the point where you feel like Eli White and Mike Yastrzemski can cover the other corner spot and you can put Dubon back at shortstop? Is that when Kim is gone? Or do they get aggressive this week and they say, we're going to call up an outfielder? Because if you think about it, they've added 2 outfielders to the 40-man roster in the last couple weeks. They added Deshaun Kiersey and they added Brewer Hicklin. Both those guys were minor league free agents. They signed over the winter. Both those guys had opt-outs in their deals. Atlanta felt good enough about their performance in the minors where they added them both to the 40-man roster and optioned them to Gwinnett. So do you wait for Ronald to come back? Or do you call one of those guys up to play in, either get in the lineup, right? Do you play one of them against lefties when Yastrzemski's on the bench and it's White and Yastrzemski otherwise? So that Dubon can play short with Mateo backing him up? Or do you just carry Kim on the bench with Mateo at short until Ronald's back? But you've got to figure that out. The other thing you have to figure out is Austin Riley. And this is a bigger long-term issue. Austin Riley's played almost every day. He's been in every game. I think he's made all but 2 starts. I think there's 2 games where they had him on the bench and he ended up being a pinch hitter. So it's not a lack of playing time like it is for Kim. And you could argue that one of Atlanta's issues they had was when they had a top 10 offense in the month of May, they should have had Kim playing every day to see if he could get back to form. But after a stretch early, they just started rotating him in with everybody else. But Riley's hitting .209 with a .627 OPS. They are both easily career lows. His strikeout rate of 28.6%, the only season where it's higher is that half season in 2019, where he just could not seem to hit any sort of breaking ball down and away. And teams learned that and just kept spamming them at him. His ground ball rate is 38.4%. It's a pretty high mark. He's been good in seasons where he ran a ground ball rate this high, but it was because he was hitting more line drives than he is now. He's like a 20% line drive rate. And in those seasons, he was running 26, 28% ground ball line drive rates. He's been bad this year. And to his credit, he's acknowledged it. He was quoted in the AJC saying it's frustrating as hell. One of the things that's been, I'm not going to say bothering me, but I've noticed in a bad way. And again, I hate to go back to just the complete dorks on social media here. But there is this idea when a baseball team is playing bad that it's happening because the players don't care. They're just collecting their paychecks. They're showing up. They're going through the motions. They don't care. And it's usually said by people who have never met any of these players, who have never been into the clubhouse, who have never interviewed them, and are not listening to the things they are saying when they talk. You can't help but read that interview that friend of the show, Chad Bishop, had with Austin Riley and take away anything but he cares more than any of us do. Because he's the one who's having to live with this failure all of the time. And he's talking about the mechanical changes that they've made. He's talking about the mindset and the approaches and how when he gets some success, then he takes a step back, right? And he's having to remind himself like, hey, like that was, I do this a lot, process over results, right? He even cites in there, I felt good going in the game and I barreled some balls up and they weren't hits. But you have to remember, hey, you had a good at bat. You had a good batted ball. It didn't work out. He's like, you have to try to stay positive and take away the things that are showing what you're doing right when you do it right. But what Atlanta has to figure out is how much longer they can deal with this current construction. This is the third question. This current construction of the left side of the infield. Okay. Ha-Seong Kim, one, playing almost every day. Two, being on the roster and period. We've seen the Braves eat some money already this year. We saw them eat the money owed to Aaron Bummer. They paid him the rest of the $9.5 million to go away. We saw them eat the money owed to Joel Payamps. They DFA'd him. He's now back in the organization. We saw them pay Jose Suarez and then get rid of him. It's a different conversation when it comes to $20 million owed to Ha-Seong Kim. But at the same time, at a certain point, it doesn't matter. I would argue Ha-Seong Kim hitting is if he could get going again, that would be a legitimate help for the Braves. The ship has sailed on his stats getting to the point where you would extend him a qualifying offer. And he would decline it. His stats that's out the window. That was one of the considerations you were thinking about. If you got him all year and he played close to the 2023 level, where he's stealing 30-something bags and giving you above average to fringe Gold Glove caliber defense, you could qualify and offer him and get a draft pick when he leaves. That ship has sailed. He could be a 300 hitter from this point on. And I don't think you're going to see a qualifying offer in the works. But how much longer can they carry him on the roster and how many more starts can they give him? And then Austin Riley, this is a different conversation. Is this fixable? Heidi Watney talked about this. Is this lingering effects from the core muscle injury last year? Because a lot of this looks to be mental too. Is this he started off not feeling great and he got into a slump and now mentally it's impacting him? Is that what this is? Is this fixable? Because if it is fixable, if you fully believe you can get back, maybe not the 22 and 23 Austin Riley, maybe not the 21 Austin Riley where he hit 300, but if you feel like you can get the 25 to 30 homer version of Austin Riley, the one who's hitting 260, but you don't think it's going to happen until next year, do you go find a third baseman for the rest of the year? If you don't think you're ever going to get him back, do you try to move that deal? Do you do it at the trade deadline? Do you do it in the offseason? Questions you got to answer. And right now, Atlanta's got to focus on the rest of this season. I don't think you need to spend the time and the investment on figuring out Austin Riley's future right now. I think the conversation right now needs to be, can you get him hitting his weight by the trade deadline? He's hitting 209. He's listed at 225. Can you get him back to that point? Can you get him where he's not some sort of automatic out? And arguably, I'm not sure. I really don't know if what's going on with Austin Riley right now is fixable. We saw Ozzie Albies last year in the first half was dreadful. We saw Michael Harris in the first half was dreadful. And Ozzie's was directly related to that wrist injury he had that ended his 24 season. And he started to pick it up in the second half the farther he got from that injury. Harris was mechanical stuff, mechanical issues. And Tim Hires apparently was trying to fix that mechanical issue since the season started. And it finally started to click right before the All-Star break. And from that point on, he was better. He wasn't as good as he's been this year. And I do think one of the simple kind of, I'm not going to call it a misconception, but one of the, we kind of gloss over Harris and we just say, oh yeah, he was good in the second half. He wasn't that good in September. His OPS dropped to low sixes. He hit 237 with the OPS in the low sixes. But he had a 2-month stretch in there, July and August, where he was hitting over 300. His OPS was in the high eights, right? Is a turnaround like that coming for Austin Riley? Is it mechanical, like it was for Harris? Is it injury related, like it was for Ozzie, the farther he gets away from that core muscle surgery? Atlanta's priority needs to be, for this season, what can you count on from Austin Riley? Is the bat you eventually add, do you need to find somebody who can cover third base? Can you stick with somebody who can cover corner outfield? What do you do here? That's the big question there. And those are the three questions. Everything plaguing the Atlanta Braves right now in the month of June can be boiled down to those three things. None of those problems feel impossible to solve. I also don't think you can solve all of them. I think the lack of sellers in this market, combined with the fact that while your farm system is on the upswing, it's still not in the same realm from a public perception and the ratings of farm systems that we have available to us. And remember, MLB teams do it differently than we do, where you can say anybody that they want, they can outbid the Dodgers for, or they can outbid the Yankees for, or they can outbid whoever it is without decimating the system, right? Yeah, you could probably get whoever you wanted if you're willing to trade Owen Murphy and Cam Caminiti and Eric Hartman and Tate Southesine. But I don't think any of us want to trade all of the best prospects in the system to make a push in 26. So what can you solve internally? What do you need to go out of the system to solve? And what is it going to cost you? You probably can't solve it all. But if you can answer one of those three questions internally, whether it's through improving a guy who's already here, like a Riley, whether it's through promoting a prospect like an Owen Murphy for the rotation, or getting back an injured player like a Ronald Acuna Jr., or like a AJ Smith-Shawver, or continuing to rehab Hurston Waldrop and getting him back into frontline form. If you can answer one of those questions, it makes the deadline a little over a month from now, 5 weeks, makes it a little more manageable. That'll do it for another very long edition of Braves Today for Monday, June 29th. Please like the video, please subscribe, both here and at bravestoday.com. The team's been bad, and over the weekend, we had a couple paid subscribers unsubscribe, and it asks you why you're unsubscribing when you do that. And not all of them answered, but two of the ones that unsubscribed said this team is bad and they don't want to give their money to them anymore. And I just want to point out, the money's not going to the Braves. You're taking money from Bandit. You're taking food out of Bandit's mouth. But so please, subscriptions to bravestoday.com, subscriptions to the podcast, whether it's on audio or video, all of that does help us out a ton. Tell your friends. Tell your friends, hey, if you've got doom and gloom about the Braves, Lindsay's trying to take a rational, data-based approach to what is good, what is not good, and what the Braves should do. Tell a friend. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.